Hi, welcome to my two-part video about the Karcher foam cannons, where in the first part I'll talk about the specifics on how to actually operate these foam cannons. And then for the second part I'll go into a bit of an in-depth pseudo-scientific look into how these detergents actually work and how to actually remove all the mess from whatever you're trying to clean. So the first part, how to actually operate these Karcher foam cannons. And so there are two popular models that are commonly sold. So they are the FJ6 and in this case the FJ10. Now, both of these cannons, being the 6 and the 10, are functionally identical. They only have one very minor point of difference, and that is how they actually connect to the detergent bottle. And so for the FJ6, you basically just have to unscrew the top and then get this and then basically screw it in. However, for the FJ10, it's a bit of a different process. Whereas what you do is you take off the top little grey cap here, you stick this through the little seal connection here, and if you can see in here, this basically sort of opens up and then closes, and then springs closed, where you have a pretty good connection to the bottle that you're sealing it into. And so just to give you an actual example, put it all the way in, put it on, press the button, let it sit, and then you're basically good to go. And then as for actually connecting to the Karcher itself, it's the same as all of the other connections, but you basically just go in sideways, and then rotate it, and then happy days, you're good to operate. Now this only weighs about approximately 1.5 kilograms, and so while you'd assume this would be pretty fatiguing after some time, you actually don't notice it at all because you can hold it like this, you can hold it like this, it doesn't really matter, but after using this for some prolonged periods of time, I didn't feel any fatigue as a result of the way that this bottle hangs off here. And naturally, to remove it, it's basically just you press this in here up here, and then it just clicks off again. Pretty easy. If for whatever reason you've lost the proper cap, it can also work just by putting in like this, and you still have a pretty good seal as well. So it's not as good as the way it's supposed to be, but it still works. However, one thing I have noticed though from operating it like this is that it's very easy to bump this yellow button mid-job and have the whole thing fall out. So at least if you connect it the proper way, it's not as easy to basically fall out of your hand. So anyway, in regards to the FJ6 versus the FJ10, if I had my time all over again, I would have gotten the FJ6 instead, because having this little clip-on thing here, I mean, it's a cool little nifty gadget I suppose, but it doesn't really make that much of a difference. You could probably just save about $10 to $15 just by getting the 6. And I mean, yes, it is pretty convenient and easy to be able to swap out the bottles with the FJ10. But if we're being realistic, I mean, come on, we're not in the battlefield. We don't need to be doing very fast magazine changes. But with that being said, there's nothing wrong with the FJ10 either. Now, how do we actually control this thing? Well, as far as the amount of water flow that is coming out, we don't have any control. The pressure that comes out of this is what you're going to be getting out of this. But there's two factors that we do have control of. And so with this style here, we can control the ratio of the amount of detergent that has been mixed with that consistent water stream. And so down at the bottom here, there'll only be a tiny bit of detergent being sucked up with the Venturi effect to mix it with the water that's coming out. But if you have it up to the max here, and you'll see in this B-roll footage, is that it's going to be very thick and very obvious that it's getting mixed in. And so just like with anything in life, you generally want this to be roughly around the middle ground, just so you can see where you've done and you're not needlessly wasting detergent. Now the other thing that you have control of here as well is the type of stream that comes out. So you could have a fog or a jet depending on how you rotate this nozzle here. And again, you probably want this in some type of middle setting, just to maximize your efficiency. Now, the good thing about these two particular Karcher foam cannons is that they're compatible with every Karcher model from the K2 all the way to the K7, and that includes my K5 right here. And I actually really like how Karcher can do this, is I could easily use this on my K5 and lend it out to my friend that's got a K7 and lend it out to another friend that's got a K2. This is a little hypothetical, of course, because, I mean, who's got that many friends? And so a good metaphor I like to use for this interoperability is that anyone that is viewing this through a YouTube account could easily like and subscribe to my YouTube account as they're viewing it, if they happen to want to do that. With all of that out of the way now, I can actually move on to a little bit of the simple man science about how detergent actually works and making a cleaning job a little bit easier. And so Karcher and pretty much all of their competing companies that make detergents can provide these solutions in a very wide variety of different detergent mixes. And so in my particular case, I'm using the stone and paving cleaner, but you can also get car ones, and you can get a whole bunch of general ones, and they all have slightly different chemistries. But a few things that all of them have in common though, is that they're all surfactants. And what a surfactant basically is that on a molecular level, on a very, very small level, it attracts dirt and grease on one side of it, and then attracts water on the other side of it. And so if you imagine this little sort of bar that's kind of floating around, and so it'll be grabbing all the mess out of the way on one side, grabbing the water on the other side, and then as the water rinses away, it'll be dragging that mess away with it. Because we're all aware, water does have a small degree of surface tension, and so for very tiny cracks and divots, the surface tension would be too high in order to be able to allow the water to be able to soak into those tiny cracks and divots. Whereas the surfactants actually lower that surface tension, and so you can actually get liquids into those tiny areas. And furthermore as well, water, and all detergents for that matter, is what's known as a soluble, meaning that if you expose it to this substance for long enough, it turns solid messes into liquid messes, which is obviously much easier to wash away. Now, another benefit that isn't really spoken enough about with these is that they're very good at killing certain types of stains as well. And when I say kill, I mean that in the literal sense, because a lot of stains is actually mold and moss. And so this actually kills the mold and moss, and also addresses them all the way down to its original spores, whereas water will not deal with that issue. And now just a couple of extra little buts and ifs just to be aware of when you're using detergent. And so it is very important that you use the appropriate detergent for the said medium that you're cleaning. And a great example of this is to be very careful with car paint. If you're using a pressure washer to wash your car, just be mindful that you're only using an appropriate, specifically made car shampoo or car detergent for it. Because if you use the wrong type of detergent on a car, it can actually strip its paint away. And so just as a very, very simple rule of thumb, just make sure you actually buy the specific detergent for the specific type of mess or thing that you're trying to clean. Now onto my next but or if or whatever, is that detergent is great at getting the majority of types of stains out of your car or out of your driveway or what have you. But there's 3 stains that detergent is basically useless for, and they are calcium stains, limescale, and rust. But fortunately for that, there is a totally different chemical compound known as CLR. And so if you do have a bit of, say, rust or whatever on your driveway, before applying the pressure washer to it, probably doesn't hurt just to spray a bit of this onto it, give it a bit of elbow grease, give it a bit of a scrub, and just let it soak in. And then later on, get your pressure washer out with the detergent and then spray the rest of the driveway. And so that'll be the best way to get an overall result. Now, a common observation that comes up when using these foam cannons with a very high powered pressure washer is the foam cannon kind of redundant when you have so much power coming out of this? And to answer that question, kind of, but just hear me out. If you're using, say, a K3 or a K2, you'd definitely be needing detergent because the pressure that's coming out of a nozzle will not be enough to do the work by itself. However, if you're using, say, a K5 and above, the pressure that comes out of it will be enough to remove all the stains out of your driveway, and the process won't really be helped that much by using a detergent. But when you're using water by itself, you'll find that the mold and moss will return to the driveway pretty quickly. However, if you use detergent whilst you're doing this, the trace amounts of the surfactant will still be in the driveway, and it'll actually hinder the return of the mess from coming in. So just to paraphrase that in a very simple way, if you have a very high power pressure washer, you don't necessarily need the detergent to be able to remove the mess, but the detergent does help in slowing down the mess's return. And the question can be raised as well, if this been the case, could you just use a high pressure washer to clean all the mess and then just do a foam spray afterwards? And in that particular case, yes, you can absolutely do this, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Anyway, I hope this has answered all your questions about getting the Karcher foam cannons and if it's worthwhile for you, and also how to operate it. And thanks for sticking around to the end.